You're tuned in to the Mind of an Entrepreneur show with your host, myself, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. I am a multi-million-dollar business developer. I have developed business and real estate around the world, and I want to share with you my mental strategies, my technical strategies, and how I made it in the world of business. So I don't teach theory. I tell you about my life and introduce you to people who can also share with you what they've done to become successful. This is a practical show. This ain't a theory show. You don't want to miss it. So stay tuned.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judges, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Our prisons, the largest prison system in the world, are filled with those who are the victims of poverty. The women who are disenfranchised, young teenage mothers, are victims of poverty. Poverty is knocking at our door all day long. It sits in the mirror for us to look in every morning. When we look at what's going on with the schools in this country, we build more prisons than we build schools. Poverty is in our face all day long. Why is everybody behaving all of a sudden like this is some great revelation? We are angry, we're upset, we look around for some comfort, and we don't find any. Well, we have to look to ourselves, because I think the last frontier of truth and hope in this country are the people themselves.
belong to yourself. You're an independent people, created from the nation of free people. Yes, sir. You don't need to go nowhere but to yourself. Yes, sir. There will be a great separation. Yes, sir. So I said, it is on now.
The college is meant to prepare you for your future. That the time dictates that if we don't do something for ourselves as a people, we will be destroyed. And the aim of the enemy right now is to take us out.
We have God with us. We have Him as our guide. Yes, sir. We don't have to stand around here and ask the question, what must be done? Yes, sir. Get up and let's go and do something. Yes, sir. We cannot sit down. We cannot lay down. Yes, sir. We must get up. Yes, sir. And go to work.
Do you know what real joy is in life? Visioning something and bringing it into reality. That's real joy. Do you know what the next step in joy is? Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in unity.
Tonight, you need to fasten your seatbelts. We're going to hear from some of the greatest minds in the world. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of trusting our future and the future of our children into the hands of those who don't love us. I believe we need to revitalize black leadership.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Peace and blessings. Welcome to the Mind of an Entrepreneur show. I'm your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. And y'all know on this show, this is where we talk about mental strategies on how to become happier, healthier, wealthier, and experiencing more love. So I just wanted to give you all the greetings. I wanted to come out here today. Many of you know that we spent, 16 weeks on manifestation and just tuning our mindset to manifestation. Then we spent another 4 weeks calibrating ourselves to the accomplishments of the Muslims. And so every once in a while, I like to jump out here and just do a little tune-up because, it's a lot going on out here. And I think the media is most effective than it's ever been. I'm talking about ever. And media and propaganda has been going on in this country for 400 and something years. Whenever the country had to justify doing something like slavery, they put out propaganda that was negative against the people that they were enslaving. So they said that we were cursed, we were dumb, we were stupid, and all these other things. And that way the people, the masses of the people didn't rebel or feel sorry for us. They just kind of had to reinforce what that belief system is. And so there's forms of that continue to this day, right? With negative images, especially about Black people, about Muslims, about just about everybody of color that exists in the media. Stereotypes, right? Attempts to box us in and imprison us into a mindset that makes it easy to control us and dominate us and get us to filter our money to those communities, right, that have become rich and the wealthiest in the world as a result of our exorbitant amount of spending, and the spending that we do as a way to kind of make up for the void many times of how we feel about ourselves. So it's an interesting dynamic. And I'm often quoting Tom Burrell when he talks about how the media has been used in advertising and how it became a point, and it becomes a point, when the brainwashed becomes the brainwasher. And so many of us, you all know that the majority of my shows are focused on those of us who are doing for self, who are entrepreneurs, who want to be conscious entrepreneurs, who understand that old business models no longer work, who are just really out here trying to not only make a difference for ourselves, but introduce much needed goods and services into our community. There's so much propaganda around it. I was listening to a show today and they were talking about women who are entrepreneurs are masculine, that we're just men in skirts. And I was just like, my God, look at all of this that's really designed to encourage us from loving our community, because that's the root of it, right? For those of us that are conscious entrepreneurs, and I'll speak for myself, I love my people. I love my community. I love myself. I love my divine femininity, which is why 60% of my show listeners and followers are Black men. Love Black men, love uplifting them. And I'm debating on whether or not, this is an aside, I'm debating on whether or not to tackle this issue that's been all over social media, right? And it was Ebony K. Williams having a conversation with Iyanla Vanzant. And Iyanla asked her question, would you date a bus driver? And her response immediately was, absolutely not. And so that created like this firestorm all over social media. And I'm debating on whether or not I want to jump in that fray. And you know what I always say to people? I think that every Black person, I think every Black company, every Black board of director, every person in the country should have a Black Muslim man or woman as their friend, consultant, or advisor. See, because those of us that are at that level that are ready to kind of just become advisors, we have internalized these great teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We have an understanding about what is going on in the world today, and a different understanding on the cause and the effects of things. And I think just to stay grounded, I think everybody needs a smart Muslim follower, okay, of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan as their friend, their confidant, their consultant, or their advisor. It's just my opinion. So that's the reason why I was thinking about jumping in that conversation. It's kind of been chopped and screwed in so many ways. If I do it, I may do it on the Sajdah Saturday morning coffee talks. We'll see, maybe a little late, but I think it might be fun just to unpack it a little bit and listen to the conversation. We'll think about it. I do think it's an interesting topic because, well, I'm not even going to get off into it. Let's get back into faith over failure. The reason why I wanted to come out again today and do this manifestation tune-up is because there's so much, well, let me say it this way. Whenever there is negativity in the universe, in the universe of the media, about the economy, about banking shortfalls, and all this propaganda, it tends to make us feel uncomfortable as business people, as entrepreneurs, because I think sometimes our inferiority sets in. And so we start thinking, if these white people are failing, if their banks are failing, then how am I going to make it in business? How am I going to be able to earn money and get access to money if they can't? And so I want to deal with that because I've been seeing a lot of that. I'm wrapping up 3 development projects and then a couple of other individual coaching sessions that I've been working with people on just their money psychology. And this is a theme. And the first thing I want to say is that this is a consolidation. Okay. This banking crisis, you have to understand it. It's as a consolidation. It's not like they woke up Monday morning and said, oh, shoot, we don't have enough burgers to make cheeseburgers. We got to shut the restaurant down. Or we don't have enough withdrawal slips to keep the bank open, so the bank got to fail. Or so many people came to withdraw their money and we ain't got it. That's not what happened. It's all digital anyway, right? And unless everybody, even if everybody went to every bank at the same time trying to withdraw money, they could pull it off because they printing it and it's digital anyway. That's a whole nother conversation. And so this has been in the works. These are regulatory compliance issues. These are audits. These are things that have been happening where the FDIC and other regulatory bodies, they go in and review the solvency of the bank, how compliant they are with regulation. So this happens. If you notice, they were signaling the First Republic shutdown for a few weeks. Okay, so kind of knew that was going to happen. And the FDIC negotiated the sell to JP Morgan Chase. What I see happening is that, you have 4 or 5 major banks that control about 50% of all bank deposits. And as we move into more of this digital currency world that is already starting to happen, I think there's a strategic move, there's a chess move to reduce the number of players. And so if those 4 or 5 banks, big banks, have 50% of the deposits, if they shut down that next tier of banks or fold them in, which has been done throughout history. I didn't bring my stats today. I thought I did. But if you go back to the 1900s, this has happened before. And where you see them shifting and consolidating and moving the banks around, people who hold money. And a lot of us are like, yeah, but the dollar is falling. The dollar is falling. And we know that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad predicted that in the late 50s, the US dollar is going to fall. He especially started to talking about it when President then Nixon took us off of the gold standard. So the currency was no longer backed by gold. It was not backed by anything other than the consumers or the people's faith in the government that issued the notes. So we knew that was a slippery slope and that the dollar would begin to tumble. And it has. And over the past 50 years, as you all hear me talk about all the time, we've become more of a data-based economy, very susceptible to data, very susceptible to media. There are charts out there that track the psychology of investors and the ebbs and flows, the buys, the sells, the puts, and they overlay that with the moves of the stock market. And what they're finding is that more recently that they've been very closely aligned. So whenever people feel certain insecurities, they know that they're going to be able to make certain predictions based on the market. All right, so when we see all that propaganda as entrepreneurs, sometimes we go back to our inferiority complex and we start thinking, if they can't make it, how am I going to make it? When we start looking at statistics, when statistics start to come out, and a lot of us are very raw and we're very sensitive right now. That's why I talked about possibly I might explore that Ebony K. Williams conversation when Iyanla Vanzant asked her, would she date a bus driver? And she said, absolutely not. When I looked at the firestorm of comments, I realized we're very raw right now. And somebody saying that something means a lot to us. Part of that rawness comes from raw emotions because of our struggle and our sojourn and where we are and our stress levels and our worries. But also some of it comes from training, because we've been trained in to be very reactive to things that people say. And it's because we're not basing our wealth, our definition of wealth. We're not basing our definition of love. We're not basing our definition of success in a level of spirituality that would give us the foundation that's strong enough for us to make it. And I try to come and give us practical things. I know in the 6-week manifestation course, we talked about the power of vision. We talked about emotionalization. We talked about imagination. We talked about the law of attraction. We talked about goal setting. We talked about using the power of thoughts. We talked about how fast our thoughts travel. And we talked about the power of prayer. We talked about the power of focus. So we covered a lot in those 16 weeks, some really tactical tools we used. And I encourage you to like and subscribe to the page and go back and check out those past episodes. And we use the book written by Charles F. Hannell to kind of, parallel and as a guide, I would say, to give us some additional tools and studies. So anyway, go back and check that out. But I wanted to come out again and do this tune-up because sometimes when we're in the thick of what we're doing, we're busy building our businesses. We're scared. It's new territory. We know that we have to let go and push beyond our intellectual capacity. We know that oftentimes the safety net that we thought we had, based on the way that they're consolidating and adjusting and managing the fall of the dollar. That's what I'm saying. Managing the fall of the dollar. We know that a lot of our safety nets aren't there anymore. And so a lot of us get afraid. And deep down inside, we're like, man, I need some help. I mean, I've said it before, like, Lord, what is happening here? And so sometimes we got to give ourselves some practical ways of looking at things. And one of my cousins one time said this to me. We were having this conversation. Excuse me. And I was getting ready to move from Chicago to DC. And I was worried about the move. And I had been commuting forever. I had a project there. This is before the hospital. I had a project there. And then I was doing work here. And so I was kind of toggling back and forth. And then finally I had to say, you know what? You got to figure something out. And I was talking to my cousin. I remember 3 people I talked to and some of the advice that they gave me, because sometimes you get advice from people and they're afraid. And so they give you advice based on their fears because they don't want you to get hurt. But this didn't happen to me with these 3 people that I talked to. I remember talking to my brother about it. And my brother just said, if it don't work out, fuck it, just come back. And I was like, that's a way of looking at it, right? And then I remember my stepsister, may she rest in peace. Her name is Terry. And she really talked to me, and she was talking about how if I go there with fear, if I'm worried, what I would have produced. And she really came from a very strong metaphysical and law of attraction phase. And then my cousin, Alice, who lives in Baton Rouge, shout out to Alice, we call her Joiselle. She talked to me, and it was a way of talking that I thought was so powerful. She talked to me about something that was near and dear to my heart. She talked to me about my grandmother, who obviously is also related to her, right? But she said to me, and this is what she said, and this is why I encourage each and every one of you. And I did not bring my, I got special gifts for you all, and I'll grab them a little later in the show for those of you who purchase coins. But I have these leather-bound journals that I have made up for you all to encourage you all to start writing down your history. But she said something to me. So my grandmother moved from Louisiana to Nebraska in about 1945 or 46. And if you all know anything about the South, there was segregation. I'm assuming things may have been a little bit better moving up to Nebraska. She was a lighter skinned woman who could kind of, maybe jazz her way into some doors with her light skin look, the light skin, little typical Creole long hair look. But Joiselle said to me, she said, I want you to think about your grandmother. And as I'm telling this story, I want you to think about your people too, but walk with me with this. She said, I want you to think about your grandmother who, at the height of Jim Crow, saved up her money. She had a 3rd or 4th grade education. She had her looks, but she was not very good in English because she grew up in a small town in Louisiana and pretty much only spoke Creole. And things were different in that part of Louisiana. She had met my grandfather, who was a Black man, and he had gone off to war, and she had been writing and corresponding with his family and wanted to move. And so Joiselle said, put yourself in her shoes. You save up enough money. And so she and I went out on the internet, and we figured out that the train ride from Baton Rouge to Omaha, Nebraska was about $7, which in 1945 was a decent amount of money. Somebody can look up for me what $7 in 1945 is in dollars today. I think we had did it at the time, but if somebody could look that up for me, just Google how much is $7 from 1945 worth today and type that in the chat. But she had her $7 and she gets on the train. She's got her bags. She don't know what it looked like in Nebraska. She don't know what that train ride is going to be like. She's never been on a train before. But she knew that she didn't want to stay down there in the midst of Jim Crow South and live that life anymore. And so Joiselle made me think about her courage. Not her braveness, but her courage. And why do I call it courage? Because she had to be afraid. And so she had to push through that fear to get on that train. There was no way of knowing if when she got to Nebraska and if things didn't work out, if she could muster up another $7 to get back home to her family. She was going up there to meet some people that she had only corresponded with via letter. And here she is growing up in this little small, tiny Louisiana town but her drive and her desire for something divine, something bigger than herself, was pulling her so powerfully that she pushed through her fears and got on that train and made it to Nebraska. And what my cousin said to me was, she said, had she not gotten on that train, me and you wouldn't be having this conversation about you thinking about moving to Maryland, not just to go there and see what's up, but to go there and build healthcare services and ultimately build a hospital. And I started crying on the phone because, thank you, Sandra D. She says $7 in 1945 is worth $117 today. So that'll give you a little perspective. So that's a lot for a woman who was probably cleaning houses or doing some kind of domestic work. But I started crying on the phone because I started thinking about her pushing through that fear. As a woman, she hadn't gotten married yet. She hadn't had her children yet. She didn't get on there with her sister. She left her sister behind. She didn't get on there with no cousins, no friends. She got on that train out of faith after corresponding with some people in Nebraska related to a man she met, because her drive was, and I remember her saying this to me, I just wanted to get up out of there. And I want us to think about that, because a lot of us go back down south in the summer. We used to spend summers as children, and we know our family was from different places in Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama. But how much courage did it take for them to leave? Especially those like my grandmother, who weren't going to meet other family members who were already there. See, a lot of our family, there was always that first person. And the first person got up in Chicago and St. Louis and New York and Kansas City and Detroit and Cleveland. And somehow they set up shop. And they wrote letters back down south and said, y'all come on up. It's, come on up. It's good up here. Or whatever they said to them. But what about the courage of that first person? About that very first person? And so because she gave me the story of my grandmother, I was able to feel my grandmother's fear. And I was able to connect to it and go ahead and make the move and take the plunge. And that was the beginning of me learning to really, really push through fears, because we're not talking about going downtown when there was no other Black people downtown. We're not talking about going to work up in a building where there were no other Black people there. We're not talking about going to a school where you would be the only Black. Yes, those acts and those things took a lot of courage. We're talking about getting on a train that probably took 2 or 3 days to go up north to somewhere you ain't never been, to hook up with some people you don't even know, and you don't even know if you're going to have a place to live. That's why when I hear about women who lived like in the Elam House in Chicago, which was a home, I think it's on King Drive. It's a historic home owned by a Black woman who would house other Black women who came up from the South, because places like the Hull House didn't allow Black women to stay there and have shelter. You you get on that train, you don't know if you're going to be raped. Rape was very common, and you couldn't say or do anything about it. You didn't know if you were going to be beaten. You didn't know if you were going to be kidnapped. There was no police department that you could call. You couldn't pick your cell phone up and call 911 and say, hey, I'm on the train and they messing with me. There was none of that. So you're on there, and the only person, and my cousin said this to me that was really powerful. She said the only person your grandmother could think to call on, or who she had to call on during that train ride, was God. There's no 911. Somebody gets you in the back of the train, whether they be black men or white men, and decide they're going to rape you, beat you up, do whatever. You had nobody to call. You didn't have nothing to do. And when she got to, when she was writing letters to what later became her in-laws and her family, because she ended up marrying my grandfather, but he was off in the Korean War. Here's another piece. They didn't know if he was going to come back. She didn't really know if he liked her like that or not. Think about that. We get all insecure over, smiling at a man or even have a conversation with a man because we like, I don't think he liked me. I don't think he feeling me. But this is different. This is a different game. So I remember when she said that to me, and I said, okay. And from that point on, I would use that as a point of reference. When I would go into a meeting, I remember going into a permitting meeting to ask for, you have to get permission or what they call a certificate of need in order to build a hospital. And I remember going into that meeting, and I remember staying all up and having all my drawings and my whole presentation together, my information about the population and how we would impact the population, everything. And I went with myself and my attorney. And my business partner was back at the office in surgery. So I pretty much went by myself. And as we had to go up to Baltimore. And it's so funny because when I was in Baltimore last week, I literally was right across the street from where I had to go to do that presentation. And we went in there, and my heart was racing, and I was nervous because when I walked in the room, there was this huge, I don't know, maybe 13-foot in diameter round table, and all white men on the other side of the table. And then I walk in, and my attorney's next to me, and he's a white man. And I go into this presentation, and I start talking about healthcare disparities and how Black people are dying, and they need help when it comes to cardiovascular disease, and we need relief. And I remember calling it a pandemic. And I want to say my presentation was 12 minutes, if I'm not the first part of it. But as I sat there, I said, I'm sitting in a place, I'm in a room that not only did people who came before me, not only were they not able to be in a room like this, but it is their courage and their heart and their faith that is the foundation I stand on and why I can be in this room today. So whether they give me the certificate of need, whether they allow us to build this hospital or not, I'm here. And I'm successful because I'm here. And so that's my faith over the potential of failure that is ingrained in the media and in the lexicon of everything around us. That's my faith over that. That's my power over that. Because just by me standing here, I'm successful. Just by me taking a step into this room, I'm successful. Just by me sitting in this chair and introducing myself as Wendy Muhammad. Y'all didn't hear me. I'm successful. Just as me standing there and sitting there and walking in as a Black Muslim woman to meet with regulators about healthcare disparity and why me and my Black business partner should be allowed to build a hospital in an area that was so discriminatory that they didn't even have enough hospitals to address the entire population. They still don't. So I said, I'm successful. So we have to arm ourselves to redefine success so that as we're working towards manifesting what we want. In that case, what did I want? I wanted permission from these regulatories. I wanted the green light to be able to go for my permitting process to begin building the hospital. And so I believe the manifestation came not because my presentation was so good, because I'm sure there were probably people before me that had good presentations. Not because I'm so smart and I'm a hidden figure, because there's been lots of hidden figures throughout our community. Lots of smart Black people who invented and developed stuff that never have gotten recognition. Not because I'm beautiful, not because they just are curious about me, but because I walked in there with the faith. And every step I kept pulling on God. And I said, every step makes me more successful than I was 10 seconds ago. Because I'm doing something, I'm walking into a room, I'm going into a place where the courage of my grandmother, the perseverance of my great, 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 great grandparents, and the legacy that I stand on is fueling me and behind me and pushing me forward. So as I made that presentation, it wasn't about whether or not they was going to say yes or no. Listen to me good. It wasn't about whether or not they were going to say yes or no. It was about me being proud and being honored to be the answer to somebody's prayers and to be part of somebody's legacy. And I'm saying that to us today on this manifestation tune-up, because I know we're all watching the news. I know we're all looking at things that say we shouldn't be successful. We shouldn't be doing this. We really should just go sit down because America's falling. The world's falling apart. Everything's crumbling around us. Listen, if that bottom rail is going to be raised to the top, then if you're calling it the top, that means it must be some at the bottom. If people in the back of the line are going to now be moved to the front and they're going to be first, then that implies that there's some people behind them. So you got to believe in the totality of who you are and where you are. So you may not even see any evidence around you that will tell you that what you're doing is the right thing or that you will be successful, because 9 times out of 10, we still live in an America today that you and I are still oftentimes the first to do a lot of stuff, right? The first Black woman here, the first Black man there, the first person to do this or that. So oftentimes we're different from our white counterparts because we don't see nobody in front of us. We don't always have somebody to go home to that says, hey, I got you. That don't work out, I'll give you a check. You can work over here. We don't always have that. Usually by the time we go stand before these regulatory boards or before we jump into that investment opportunity, we're all in. And so it takes faith. It takes courage. And I think it's good that we have one another. We have podcasts like this. We have shows like this. We have people that we can talk to, keep you a good, tight circle. But it's not easy. And there's a lot of negativity out there. But at the end of the day, I want you to take a moment, even if you don't know nothing about your mother, your father. Look, get online and find a historic figure that you can connect to. And think about the courage. Think about the emotions. Think about the excitement that person had to muster up in order to accomplish what it is that they accomplished, and in order for them to be where they eventually ended up. And remember, those are the shoes that you're standing in. Those are the shoulders you're standing on. Those are the footprints you're walking through. It's those prayers. So sometimes this island economics that is so Eurocentric to our sojourn here in America, and I say it's to our sojourn because when you talk to white people, they're always talking about like their forefathers or people that came before them. Many of them know a lot about their heritage, or often, most times, more than we do. But for us, we've been nurtured into this island these island economies where it's me, me, me. I got to survive. I got to pay my bills. I got to do what I got to do. Ain't nobody going to be here for me. And so some of that isolation impacts us as well. And it causes us to be, especially as women, sometimes to be overly masculine and overly aggressive. And so what I encourage us to do is to go into your divine by thinking through the emotions of your ancestors. Think about those beautiful divine women before you. I love history, and I love looking at, I was looking at something, let me tell you something that happened to me. And y'all know I'm spooky. So the ancestors, they be looking out for me, and they be coming for me. When I took the trip to Baltimore, on the plane, I was listening to a speech by Adam Clayton Powell, Senator Adam Clayton Powell. And I was just kind of thinking about his mentality and who he is and some of the boldness and some of the things he would say. And I was just kind of playing around with those feelings in my head. And I was listening to it, just really trying to tune in to understanding him and the dates, because he predated the civil rights movement. So it was a little bit different. And then I started looking at on this this tape that I was watching on the plane, or this video on the plane, of kind of how he transformed towards the end of his life and what started to happen to him. And again, I was getting into the emotions, I was getting into the mindset, and I was really just kind of giving of myself so that I could feel it, so I could get to know him a little bit better, because he's just very interesting to me. And when I got back, maybe 4 days later, which was, today is Thursday, more than that. So let's say Tuesday, I think, I got a text from a friend who texted me a business card. And he said, this gentleman came to Chicago to meet with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as part of the Adam Clayton Powell delegation. And he wants to meet with you. And let me tell y'all something. I cannot tell y'all how many times that has happened to me. So I understand the power of history, because it's not just looking at somebody. I want you to look at these stories in history and feel those people. Think about their emotions. Think about what they were thinking. What do you think their bodies felt like? What do you think they saw through their eyes? What do you think they had to overcome deep down in their heart or at home just to do the things that they did? Just last week, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, along with other people, were on the Roland Martin show talking about Harry Belafonte. So I'm like looking at Harry Belafonte. My God, I would love to executive produce his story. And you know what? If I get to do his story, if I was to be able to be a part of that team, guess who I would cast for Harry Belafonte? Chris Brown. Because if you look at Chris, look at his jaw structure, and you look at his body habitus, he's like dead on Harry Belafonte. We can airbrush the tattoos and stuff, but I think it would be such a move for Chris. It would be almost as powerful or as powerful as when Jamie Foxx did Ray Charles. Sending healing energy to Jamie Foxx, by the way. Yeah, it would be just as powerful as that. And it would be the perfect move for Chris Brown in his career right now. So I want to do the Harry Belafonte movie. I know a lot of people don't like Chris Brown because they still mad at him over the Rihanna thing. Let me tell you something. That brother could do it. He can sing, but we can make him look just like, we can airbrush the tattoos. Don't worry about that. But that's what came to my consciousness. Talk about an impactful movie, and talk about taking Harry Belafonte from his generation and teaching other generations about him through a popular artist that they already love, and people get an opportunity to see him escalate and success and soar and transform and evolve into this powerful character. Man, please, we'll win all kind of awards. And if they don't give us no awards, guess what? Future generations around the world will know who Harry Belafonte is. So those are the kind of things that I use oftentimes to help me navigate fear, to help me muster up courage. But not only just that, because that's on that level, but also to help me do something different. Because I'm going to say this one last thing before I'm going to end this, and I will take your questions. I haven't been reading the chat. So put your questions in the chat about this. Sometimes we fail silently. Sometimes we are going through something and we get scared. And we get scared and we go, let me find a safe space. And we go duck and hide and put our head in the sand because we're really afraid. We go somewhere and we submit to somebody or something that we really shouldn't be submitting to, but we do it because we're scared. We're afraid. So we say, oh, let me find somebody that I can bury my head in their chest, put my head in the sand, and use them as my safety net. And so I like to address that as well, because sometimes we become victims to our own lack of courage. And see, this is when it gets scary, because that's when a lot of us start to experience envy and jealousy, because we're afraid. We don't push through the courage. Nobody's really giving us the tools on how to do it. And then we see somebody else come along and they're manifesting like crazy. They're like light years ahead of us. At least so we think. And we don't know how, we don't know why. So we're really mad and angry and jealous of that person, not because of what they got, but because of what we don't got and what we wish we had done. So some of this stuff is a lack of tools, because it's hard for people to be jealous when they know that they could have did better. It's tough. It's tough for the ego to say, I could be doing better. It's hard. So use these tools. Go back through here to the manifestation class. Go back through those courses, the 16 weeks that we did. Calibrate yourself with the accomplishments of the Muslims that we did for those 4 weeks, and find ways to document your family history. Start practicing putting yourself in the emotional space of somebody else. Pick historic figures that you look at their video. YouTube is a great university. You can look at their video, you can look at them speak, you can look at their accomplishments and think about what were they going through. I think about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad running from the hypocrites for 7 years until he exhausted them. How exhausted must he have been? How much stamina did he have to wear down the hypocrites? That's a whole nother story. But think about that. But even when I think about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1952 moving at 4847 South Woodlawn Avenue in that neighborhood. What was the neighborhood like? What do people say about people like him who moved there? He had a friend next door, Dr. Reverend Lou Rawls. I don't know if y'all knew that. The pastor of Tabernacle Baptist Church. That's who he bought the land from that the palace actually sits on. That's the deal that he did over the back fence with the money in the paper bag. That was, he bought the house from his friend next door. He held Savior's Day sometimes because the crowd started to get too big. The followers got too big and they would hold them at Tabernacle Baptist Church. I'll tell you something. We talk about getting into ancestors and they will come to you and talk to you and work with you. I know y'all think I'm crazy. I know y'all say, Wendy live in a whole alternate universe. I do. I mentioned that because, and I'm going to tell this story a little later, but there's a whole story about Reverend Lou Rawls and how it interacted with my history and how it circled back around, not only with the ownership of the home, but with working with his former church. So anyway, I saw a question. Sister Zakiya said, how does one overcome the feeling of regret in the midst of failures? The feeling of regret. So I'm assuming, Sister Zakiya, what you mean is that maybe you failed at something and you felt you could have done more. You felt you could have done something differently. And when the failure occurred, you regretted it. This is what I want to say to you. Is it really a failure? See, the mere fact that you have the regret means that you recognize that you could have done something differently. You could have tweaked your approach. You could have worked a little harder. You could have stayed up a little later. You know the tools and the things that you possibly could have done. So now you just have to go a step further and learn from that. See, use your failures to learn yourself. If you know that you should be studying for a test, and if you know that you need to study for this test and that you probably should stay up at least until 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe the test is at 10, but you can work it through till 1 o'clock in the morning, but you decide you're going to go to bed at 9 o'clock. And then you wake up at 7:30 and get to the test and you flunk the test and you say, if I only had took those last couple of hours and stayed up and studied for the test. Well, so you know that now about your body. You know how to prepare yourself, right? Whether it means that you got to sleep a little extra the weekend before, whether it means you just got to push through it, get you some coffee or tea and push through it. But now you know more about yourself. You know more about your situation. You know more. See, remember, Allah went inside of himself and studied himself. So this is what I'm talking about. When you heard me talking about how I went inside of myself to think about the courage my grandmother had to get on that train with her little $7. Well, one little $7 for her because she obviously work. This is back when people was making $2 every 2 weeks. So that means I had to go inside of myself. When I talked about studying Adam Clayton Powell or studying the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I had to connect to a part of them that is inside of me. And so when you fail, you go inside yourself and you say, what is good about me? What is best about me? What can I do differently? What could I have tweaked? How do I get past my blind spots? So I go inside of myself. See, there's no problem that we have that we can't solve if we go inside of ourselves. Somebody was talking to me the other day about losing weight. And they saw me, they was like, wow, you lost weight. How did you do it? I said, I just went inside of myself. And I figured out what I was doing or not doing. And then that started to help me turn the corner. Go inside of yourself, Sister Zakiya. What inside of you that only you know that you need to fix? This is between you and the Allah within, the God within, and say, I know what's wrong. I know what I need to do. You know what it is. You know where you fell off. And when you do that, and when you're working on yourself, and when you're not so hard on yourself, see, some of the regret comes from comparing ourselves to other people. We meet other people our age, and maybe they're doing something we're not doing. Maybe they got something we don't have. Maybe we thought that by now we should have such and such and such and such. Well, stop comparing yourself. Comparison is the thief of joy. It just is you taking score. Every day in every way, you get better and better. Every day in every way, you get stronger and stronger. Every day you go deep inside of yourself. You work on yourself. You fix those things, but you stay connected to the core of you. And we learned in manifestation class that sits rooted in our solar plexus. You remember we talked about that. We went through that exercise. That's that root. It's not the root chakra, but it's the root of where all of this stuff begins, and it's what will connect you. It connects all your chakras, but it'll connect you to the Creator. And so you think about that. You got examples around you, and you just keep stepping. You just keep moving, because how you fail today will become part of your beauty tomorrow. I'm going to say that again. How you fail today will become part of your beauty tomorrow. And the lessons you learn from your failure today is something can't nobody take away from you. The stuff you learn. Stuff I went through back in the day. And not only the way I was able to overcome it, but overcome it and triumph is a connection to Almighty God, Allah, that can't nobody take from me. They can say what they want to say about me, but I know what I overcome, what I overcame. All right, any more questions? So nobody, any more questions? Y'all just quiet in the chat today. Y'all must really be thinking. Am I provoking y'all to think? Talk to me in the chat. I see a bunch of fists and hearts and hundreds, and people say, yes, I can see that. Somebody said, wow, yes, ma'am. Speaking into existence, blah, blah, blah. All right. I'm going to show a quick video. I'm going to go get this journal that I wanted you guys that I want y'all to see. And I'm going to talk about that before we go off. So check out this video and I'll be right back. Okay, I guess I wasn't fast enough, right? Okay, so I got these really cute leather-bound journals. They're like it's like a rawhide leather. Somebody gave me these and did these. It's so cool. And it's got this really nice antique looking paper in here. And what I thought we could start doing with these is start recording our history, start just kind of journaling our feelings and all of that kind of stuff. And it's got this cute like clasp. You see it right here on the side, and then you just hook it. Once you hook it, almost dropped it. You hook it and you pull this little thing around, and it's got a little embossing of Sajdah House on the side. So I only got 20 of these. And so what I wanted to do was to help kick off the documentation for you and your family history is to give you this very special leather-bound Sajdah House antique looking journal when you buy one commemorative Elijah coin. So when you get a coin, the next 20 people to get a coin are going to get this beautiful journal. And I just love it because it just reminds me of something that you would have that's old school, maybe from your family. Imagine if you had something like this from your great-great-great-grandfather and he had documented history. Imagine how your great-great-grandchildren are going to feel when they get this document from you. And people could say, well, they probably won't be using that. They're going to be using electronic data. They may be, but if they got this, think about how beautiful it'll be. And so on here, you can write in here, you can draw in here, you can place pictures on here. But I just think it's important that we start to document and value our history. We were having a conversation on a meeting. I'm sitting on a board with Dr. George Frazier for the Legacy Museum that he's building, which is a museum for Black entrepreneurs and inventors. And we were talking about how the value, how we in the work that we're doing with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House, even just through these coins, with the urban historic preservation movement that I've been blessed to be a vanguard of, and those of you who are helping me with that movement, with the Elijah Muhammad House, with even the work that I'm doing on all the different various boards and stuff that I'm sitting on now. I'm starting to get speaking engagements to come and speak about this urban historic preservation and economic development and how it ties into these new industries of Black cultural tourism and preservation. And one thing that I had to say to everyone, because there were numbers thrown around of what this museum would cost. And I said to them, I said, the preservation community, the broader community, and even our community is not used to attaching big valuations to the preservation of our history. We're just not used to it. We attach big valuations to athletes. You know, you could be just graduating from college, getting ready to go be a quarterback somewhere, and we don't know if you're going to be able to play or not. And we have multi-millions of dollars attached to that. There's singers where multi-millions of dollars are attached. Actors, it's okay. And we say, yep, let's attach hundreds of millions of dollars to that. But when we talk about preservation of our history, preservation of projects and homes and people who are germane to our history, and connecting with that history is so powerful. I told you all, I sat on the plane studying somebody and got back to Chicago, and somebody sent me a note saying, hey, I knew that person. So don't tell me that studying our history is not powerful and seeing ourselves in a different way. When my cousin told me the story of my grandmother and how she saw my grandmother and made me go through the emotional journey that my grandmother could have gone through just in her sojourn and her migration from the South to the North, it changed my life. So we have to raise the value of preservation and history. I encourage you all, when you go on vacation, when you go visit, instead of hanging out and eating all day and going to the club and going to the mall, go to a Black museum. Go and feel some connection to people who came before you, whose shoulders you're standing on. And that's going to help us push the value of our history and the preservation of our history for ourselves. It's time out for everybody else to be making all the money off of us. We got to step up and do this ourselves. And if it wasn't so valuable, people wouldn't be attaching so many terms and making so many demands as it relates to our history. Let me tell you something. This is not something that I ever knew. And I've been a consultant, and I'm probably well above average when it comes to knowledge in different industries. Okay. I'm going to get off of here because I'm going over, but I just got to say this. I'm probably, just because I started out in public accounting, I've been in a lot of businesses, and then I went into the consulting world. A lot of people in public accounting, then they go into offices and they sit in those offices and do different jobs. But I was moving around, and I know so many industries. I know so much information at such a young age that I probably forgot most of it. That was just how Allah built me and how he developed me. You know, later when I found out that I was Fulani and Fulanis are nomadic, I was like, oh, okay, that's it. But the point I'm making is, when I started to see that, and I started to realize when I got into this preservationist world, how valuable our history is to everybody else. You got museums in England and throughout Europe with our history in it. And then you go to Africa on the continent and you'd be pressed to find information about us. So everything about Mali and the first mathematicians up in Mali and the universities and all that, that's in museums in Europe. And when I started the preservation work of the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the millions of dollars I've been offered to let somebody else just tell the story the way they want to tell it, I had to go to the streets on that one. Like, no, y'all just told me what I'm sitting on and what we are sitting on as a people. And so I implore you all to support. I implore you all to help us do what the minister told us to do and not give them a victory. I'm using these commemorative coins as a way to raise funds. The information to purchase is going across the bottom. Some of you may say, well, I don't really want a coin. I ain't really interested in membership. Then support. You see the Cash App is going across the bottom. There's a way you can donate. Sister Zakia, if you could put the donation site in the chat. There's a way that you can donate. But support. Let's give over the preservation of our history as a people to other people in the preservationist industry who look like us. It's time out for all of our history to be owned, monetized, manipulated, repackaged, and sold by people who don't look like us. That ain't racist. That ain't revolutionary. That's just common sense. That's like me saying to somebody, you know what? Yeah, tell my grandmother's history and y'all can make money off of it. Gee, my grandmother, I should be able to make history off of it. That's like me saying, here's the history of all the things that my mother and father did, and I'm going to write it out and give it to y'all, and y'all can sell it and keep it and make money off of it. Meanwhile, my children will be born, and they can be born and they can go into poverty and all of this kind of stuff. What's really happening here? We got to step up. We got to wake up. And so support the renovation and restoration of the former home of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. To make a donation, all you have to do is go to sajdahhousedonations.com to get the coin. Just go to sajdahhouse.com. We need you all to buy the coin in droves. So buy a lot of coins. We have about 900 coins left. And let me tell you something. What would be the biggest blessing is if we can get rid of all 900 of those coins by Monday. Why? Because that'll give us the chunk of money that we need. We don't have to ask nobody else for nothing. We get this thing done, and then we're going to keep moving with programming and supporting and preserving other projects that are important to our community. And let me tell you what this is going to do to our cities. Because I think sometimes when people hear this, maybe powers that be, maybe white people, they think that we're going to get this history and something sinister is going to happen to them. That's between them and God. But let me tell you, when we get this history and we start bringing tourism to the city, when we get this history and we start elevating property values in our cities because these homes and these houses are being renovated and restored, and they become attraction points. And I said to the city council in Chicago, let's make the city of Chicago the center of a cultural renaissance, Black cultural renaissance, as opposed to the vortex of violence. We can change the economy and we can change the world when we begin to preserving real estate and our history and incidents and places and things that are important to our underserved communities. Start serving the communities like that and letting them connect to the courage of their ancestors. And I guarantee you we'll cut down on the violence. We'll cut down on all the things that we hate about living in those cities and the ultimate systemic racism that comes down on us as a result of these behaviors because we don't know ourselves. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us, accept our own and be ourselves. So, all right, family, with that, forgive me for going over today. May Allah bless you. I'm going to put some thought into that Saturday conversation, and I'll post it and let you guys know. But we'll see you all Saturday, inshallah, for the Saturday Sajdah Saturday morning coffee talk. Peace and blessings. Information's going across the screen there. All right. Love you all, and may Allah bless you. Peace and blessings.
Greetings, conscious entrepreneurs. Add the Mind of an Entrepreneur show to your Roku TV lineup and catch up on past episodes of all your favorite Mo Today shows.